Hello, friend. Welcome to History ZZZ. Get comfortable. Let your body settle into wherever you are resting. Let your shoulders drop. Let your hands go still. Take one slow breath in and let it go. Tonight, I want to take you to a city. Close your eyes and imagine a vast plain in northern China. The Wei River winds silver through the valley below. The mountains rise in the distance, faint and purple against the evening sky. The air is warm and carries the smell of incense, roasting meat, river mud, and something sweet, chrysanthemum wine perhaps, or the pears from the imperial orchards. Ahead of you, the city stretches to every horizon. Not a village, not a town. A grid of broad avenues and walled districts, enormous and orderly, lit with 10,000 lanterns as the evening deepens. You are looking at Chang'an. The year is 700 CE. The Tang Dynasty is in its golden age. This is the largest city on earth, and tonight it is yours to wander. Come inside. Chang'an was not a city that grew. It was planned. The Tang emperors inherited a city that had been laid out by their predecessors with the precision of a chessboard. 108 wards, each enclosed by its own walls and gates. The avenues between them were wide enough to march an army through. The widest, the Imperial Boulevard, stretched 155 meters from one side to the other. By comparison, a major road in modern Paris is perhaps 20 meters wide. When the evening drum sounded from the towers, the ward gates closed. Everyone inside stayed inside. Everyone outside stayed outside. The city organized itself into its neighborhoods and rested. But for now, in this hour just before the drum, the streets are still alive. Merchants are closing their stalls. Children are being called in from the lanes. The smell of cooking drifts over every wall. Somewhere nearby, a pipa is being played, that four-stringed lute with its bright, plucked sound, and someone is singing something slow and old. The avenue stretches ahead of you, straight and wide and golden in the lantern light. The West Market is quieting now, but just an hour ago it was the loudest place on earth. Over 3,000 shops spread across this district. Silk merchants, spice traders, metalworkers, jewelers, horse dealers, booksellers, wine sellers. The goods came from everywhere. Persian merchants in long coats and tall felt hats sold lapis lazuli from Afghanistan and glass vessels from the Mediterranean coast. Arab traders offered frankincense, myrrh, and rosewater. Sogdian middlemen, those brilliant Central Asian merchants who connected East and West, moved along the stalls with the easy confidence of people who have made this journey 100 times. The Tang court did not merely tolerate this foreignness, they celebrated it. Foreign music filled the imperial palace. Foreign fashions spread through the aristocracy. Foreign foods appeared on court menus. Persian polo was played in the pleasure parks. The Tang elite wore Central Asian clothing, sat on chairs instead of cushions, a foreign innovation, and drank grape wine from Western vineyards. Chang'an was the most cosmopolitan city on earth. Perhaps 100,000 foreigners lived here permanently. Tonight, walking through the West Market as the last stalls close, you can hear at least a dozen languages before you reach the far gate. Consider for a moment what silk meant. For centuries, the Chinese held a monopoly on it. The secret of how it was made, that it came from the cocoon of a caterpillar feeding on mulberry leaves, was so carefully guarded that the penalty for revealing it was death. The Roman Empire spent so much gold importing Chinese silk that emperors tried to ban it, worried about the trade imbalance. Byzantine diplomats attempted to steal the secret. Eventually, they succeeded. But for most of the world, through most of history, silk meant China. and silk meant Chang'an. The bolts in this market were extraordinary, not just plain weave, but figured silk, woven with patterns of flowers, birds, horses, dragons. Some had been dyed with colors so saturated they seemed to glow in low light. Crimson, saffron yellow, a deep blue made from woad, an indigo so dark it was almost black. A merchant is wrapping a bolt now, carefully, in plain linen for transport. It will travel west, through Central Asia, across the Persian plateau, through the markets of Baghdad, and perhaps as far as Constantinople or Rome. A noblewoman in a city thousands of miles away will wear it at a banquet and wonder idly where it came from. She will never imagine this market, these lanterns, this city. But this is where it began. Walk deeper into the ward near the West Market, and the architecture changes. Here, a Zoroastrian fire temple flickers behind a carved stone screen. The followers of Ahura Mazda, Persians who fled the Arab conquest of their homeland and found refuge in Tang, China, tend a flame that has never been allowed to go out. Next to it, a Nestorian Christian church stands in the evening quiet. The Nestorians followed a branch of Christianity driven east by theological disputes in Byzantium, traveling along the Silk Road until they reached China. A famous stele erected just decades from now will commemorate their arrival in glowing terms, calling their faith a luminous religion from the West. Further on, a Buddhist monastery sounds its evening bell. The deep, resonant tone rolls across the rooftops. Buddhism had come to China from India, traveled along the same Silk Roads, and taken deep root. In this century alone, the monk Xuanzang made a legendary pilgrimage to India to retrieve sacred texts, a journey so epic it would later inspire one of the great novels of Chinese literature. In the Tang capital, all of this coexisted. Fire worshippers, Christians, Buddhists, Taoists, Confucians, and a growing Muslim community from the Arab world. The city held them all. The evening bell sounds again, and somewhere in each of these places, someone pauses and offers a prayer in a different language to a different sky. The city was threaded with water. 2 canals ran through Chang'an, fed from the rivers to the south. In the warm months, the banks were planted with willows, their long branches trailing in the slow current. Pleasure boats drifted in the evenings, carrying poets and musicians and officials who wanted to think. The Tang court had an extraordinary relationship with poetry. The imperial examinations, the system of civil service testing that determined who would govern China, required not just knowledge of the classics, but the ability to compose verse. A candidate who could not write a good poem could not pass. The greatest poets of Chinese history walked these canal paths. Li Bai, the most celebrated of them all, lived in Chang'an at this time. He was a wanderer by nature, often drunk, given to sudden inspiration and sudden departures. He wrote about the moon over mountain rivers and the loneliness of exile and the way wine makes the world softer. His contemporary Du Fu wrote about war and poverty and the suffering of ordinary people. Poems so human and precise that scholars would study them for 1,300 years and still find new things to see. Tonight, somewhere along this canal, a lamp burns in a room where someone is reading, or writing, or listening to the water move, slow and dark, under the willows. At the northern end of the city, the Daming Palace occupied a raised plateau above everything else. It was not one building. It was a city within the city, a complex of more than 40 halls and gardens and lakes spread across 3 square kilometers. The main audience hall, the Hanyuan Hall, sat at the crest of the plateau, approached by a grand ceremonial ramp and flanked by twin pavilions. When a foreign ambassador first saw it from below, the effect was intentional. You were meant to feel small. Inside the palace complex, the work of governing an empire the size of Europe went on around the clock. Memorials arrived from the provinces. Officials debated policy in long halls lit by oil lamps. Astronomers watched the stars from a tower and recorded what they saw. The emperor at the height of Tang power was a figure of extraordinary authority. He was the son of heaven, the link between the human world and the cosmic order. Every ceremony, every meal, every movement was governed by ritual. But the palace was also full of music. The Emperor Xuanzong, who would reign for over 40 years, loved performance above almost everything. He maintained an academy of 300 musicians and dancers. The pear garden, named for the orchard where it rehearsed, became a term that Chinese people would still use, more than 1,000 years later, to refer to the performing arts. Tonight, behind those walls, someone is playing. The sound of a flute, very faint, drifts across the plateau and disappears into the dark. The food of Tang Chang'an was remarkable for its variety. The city imported ingredients from across the known world, and the court kitchens experimented constantly. Grape wine from the western regions had become fashionable among the aristocracy, something unthinkable in earlier dynasties. Mutton, common in the north and among Central Asian communities, was prepared in ways that blended Persian technique with Chinese flavoring. But walk into an ordinary household in Chang'an this evening, and the smell would be something more familiar. Rice or millet cooking, garlic and ginger warming in oil, the sharp, clean scent of green onion, something braised low and slow over charcoal. In the ward nearest the West Market, a family is sharing a meal around a low table. The grandmother places a ceramic bowl of soup at the center. The children settle in. The father pours tea from a clay pot. Tea, that other great Tang contribution to the world, spreading outward from China along these same Silk Road routes. The meal is quiet and ordinary and warm. Outside, the last vendors are calling out, their voices diminishing as the ward gate bell begins to ring. The evening is coming. The city is folding inward. The drum sounds. It comes from the watchtower at the center of the city, a deep, measured beat that rolls across every ward, reaching every corner of Chang'an. It sounds 600 times. By the last stroke, the gates of every ward have closed. The curfew is in effect. Only those with official passes, physicians, midwives, officials carrying imperial orders are allowed on the main avenues after dark. But inside the wards, life continues. This is the other Chang'an. The private city, the one behind the walls. Lamps glow in narrow lanes. Neighbors talk across wooden fences. Children who should be asleep are still awake listening to a story. Somewhere someone is arguing, somewhere else someone is laughing. A dog trots down a lane, unhurried. A cat watches it from a wall. The great city has pulled inward. The avenues are empty. The watchtower guard walks his slow circuit. The night belongs to the quiet now. In the Buddhist monasteries, the night office has begun. The great Wild Goose Pagoda stands in the southern part of the city, built to house the sacred texts that the monk Xuanzong brought back from India after his 17-year journey. He had walked across the Pamir Mountains, crossed the deserts of Central Asia, visited the great universities of India, and carried back hundreds of sutras on the backs of 20 pack horses. He spent the rest of his life translating them. The pagoda built to shelter his translations rises 7 stories above the surrounding gardens. Its stone walls are 2 meters thick. At the top, a bronze finial catches the moonlight. Inside, in a lamp-lit room, a monk is chanting. The sound is low and rhythmic and continuous, like water moving over stones. He has been doing this for hours. He will do it for hours more. The practice is not about believing something exactly. It is about continuing, placing one breath after another, one syllable after another, being present here in this room with this flame on this night. The city breathes around him. He breathes with it. Somewhere in the city, Li Bai is probably drinking. He was not always welcome at court. His brilliance was unmistakable, but so was his refusal to behave. He wrote poems while intoxicated. He wandered when he was supposed to stay. He said things that officials found inconvenient. But his poems were extraordinary. In one of his most famous, he looks at moonlight falling across his floor and mistakes it, half asleep, for frost. He raises his head and sees the moon. He lowers his head and thinks of home. 20 words in Chinese. 14 centuries later, every Chinese schoolchild knows them. There is something he understood about the night that is difficult to explain, that it makes you feel both very small and very connected. That the same moon shining in Chang'an tonight has shone over every city and every village and every lonely traveler since the beginning of things. That it is still shining. Wherever you are resting right now, it is shining on you too. The same moon, the same night, just a different place in the long dream of history. The Tang emperors loved horses. Not just practically, as instruments of warfare and transport, but genuinely aesthetically, the way some people love music or poetry. The imperial stables held tens of thousands of animals, many of them the celebrated heavenly horses from Fergana in Central Asia, tall, muscular, different in bearing from the stocky steppe ponies that most Chinese cavalry rode. When one of the emperor's favorite horses died, he ordered its portrait painted and poets to compose elegies. The finest horse painters of Chinese art history worked in this court. Han Gan, the master of equine portraiture, painted animals so alive that people said they looked ready to step out of the silk. Tonight, in the imperial stables, the horses are quiet. Their breath makes small clouds in the cooler night air. A groom moves among them with a lamp, checking water buckets, adjusting blankets. One horse turns its head and watches him pass. The lamp moves away, the stable goes dark. The horses shift and settle and are still. Behind the ward walls, the private gardens were sleeping. The Tang aristocracy built extraordinary gardens, not the formal symmetry of European gardening, but something more irregular and intentional. Rocks chosen for their strange shapes, ponds reflecting the sky, pavilions placed where the view was best. A garden was not just pleasant, it was philosophical. The Taoist tradition saw nature as the great teacher, formless, yielding, responsive rather than imposing. A garden was an attempt to bring that principle inside the walls of human life, to make a small world that reminded you of the larger one. Tonight, in one such garden, a scholar has stayed out late. He sits on a stone bench near the pond, his robe pulled close against the cooling air. A chrysanthemum blooms pale in the moonlight near his hand. He is not thinking about anything in particular. The frog sounds, the water moves, a leaf falls. He watches it touch the surface and float. Eventually he rises and goes inside. The garden remains, the rocks and water and the moon's reflection, patient and still, the way nature always is when we stop demanding things of it. In the residential wards, the children are being put to sleep. A mother sits beside a low sleeping mat, her hand moving slowly across her child's back. She is singing something quiet, a folk song perhaps, about a river or a flower or the moon. The melody rises and falls like breathing. The child's eyes are heavy. Outside, the ward is settling. The last lamp in the neighbor's window has gone out. A night insect is singing in the garden. The air through the paper screen is cool and carries the faint smell of jasmine. The child's eyelids fall. The mother keeps singing a little softer. She will stay until she is certain. Then she will rise, carefully, and leave the room. The night will hold the child then, the cool air and the insect sound and the distant city going quiet all around. Chang'an at rest, a million people breathing slowly in the dark. Outside the city walls, the road west continued. The Silk Road was not one road. It was a network, shifting routes across mountains and deserts, through oasis cities and mountain passes, changing with the seasons and the politics and the security of the moment. Tonight, somewhere west of Chang'an, a caravan has stopped for the night. The camels are kneeling, their loads removed and stacked carefully. The Sogdian merchants who lead this caravan have made this journey before. They can read the stars and the wind and the quality of the silence. They know when to rest. A fire burns low between them. One man is repairing a leather harness. Another is already asleep, his coat pulled over his face. A third watches the road east, the direction they came from, where the glow of Chang'an is still visible on the horizon, even from this distance. He has been away from home for 2 years. He will not see his family for another year at least. He looks at the glow for a long moment. Then he turns away, wraps his coat tighter, and lies down beside the warm flank of his camel. The fire dims, the stars are brilliant, the road waits for morning. The Wei River moves through the dark without hurrying. It has been doing this longer than the city, longer than any dynasty. The first farmers of this valley settled here because of the water and the flat plain and the mountains at their backs. Everything that followed, the kingdoms and capitals and emperors and silk roads, grew from that first choice, made by someone who knelt beside this river and decided to stay. Tonight, a fisherman poles his flat-bottomed boat along the bank, moving quietly in the dark. He has a lamp on a pole at the bow. Fish come to light, and he watches the water with the patient attention of someone who has been doing this his whole life. The city sounds have faded here, just the water, just the occasional call of a night bird in the reeds. He is not thinking about the Silk Road or the imperial court or the poems being written a mile away. He is watching the dark water for the flash of a moving thing. He is completely present, completely here. There are many ways to inhabit a great city. This is one of them. Quietly, at the edge of things, in the dark, watching the water. The Tang Civil Service examination was one of the most demanding tests ever devised. Candidates spent years, sometimes decades, preparing for it. They memorized the Confucian classics, thousands of lines of ancient text. They practiced composing poems in strict metrical forms. They studied history and law and ritual, and then they sat in small examination cells, alone, for days at a time and wrote. The pass rate was small. Many men took the exam every 3 years for their entire adult lives without succeeding. The one who passed became an official, could govern a county, manage imperial finances, advise the emperor himself. Tonight, in a narrow room in the scholars' quarter, a young man is still awake. His lamp is burning low. His notes are spread across the floor. He has been studying since before dawn. He is 23 years old. He has failed the examination twice. He will try again in the spring. He reads the same passage one more time, the words of Confucius on the nature of governance, on the relationship between a ruler and his people, on the importance of moral cultivation, and then he closes the book. He blows out the lamp. Outside, the city is quiet. tomorrow will come. On the roof of the Imperial Observatory, an astronomer is working. The Tang court took celestial observations seriously. The movements of the stars and planets were not just scientific data, they were messages. A comet was an omen. An eclipse required ritual response. The emperor's legitimacy was linked to heavenly order, and the astronomer's job was to report accurately on what that order was doing. Tonight, the sky is clear. The Milky Way arches overhead, a river of light. The astronomer knows these stars the way a farmer knows his fields. Every position, every movement, the slow seasonal wheel of the year. He records what he sees in a log that will be copied and recopied and eventually stored in the imperial archives. Centuries from now, historians will read his notes and find in his careful observations records of events they were searching for. He does not know this. He knows only the sky and the coolness of the night air, and the scratch of his brush on the paper, and the deep satisfaction of doing careful work in the presence of something much larger than yourself. The stars move, slow and certain, above Chang'an. They have been moving since before the city existed. They will move long after it is gone. Deep inside the palace, someone is playing. The pipa, that four-stringed lute that arrived in China from Central Asia and became thoroughly inseparably Chinese, is being played in one of the smaller palace halls, far from the official chambers. This is not a performance. There is no audience. One musician, late at night, working through a piece she has been composing. She plays a phrase, stops, adjusts, plays it again. The hall is otherwise quiet. Just her and the instrument and the lamp and the night. The Tang court produced musical forms that influenced every subsequent dynasty. The instruments, the scales, the style of ornamentation, the relationship between melody and rhythm, all of it developed here at this court in these halls by people like her. She finds the phrase she was looking for. She plays it through once, all the way to the end. Then she sets the pipa down and sits very still, listening to the last notes fade. The hall is quiet again. The lamp flickers once. She picks up the instrument and begins again from the beginning. The city breathes. 1 million people within these walls and beyond, arranged in the long hierarchy of Tang society, emperor and official, merchant and monk, soldier and scholar, farmer and servant, all of them breathing slowly in the dark. History moves through people the way wind moves through grass. You cannot see the wind itself, only the bending. In 300 years, Tang China will have fractured. The capital will be sacked, the palace burned. The great West Market stalls will be empty. But tonight, none of that has happened yet. Tonight, the city is whole. The walls stand, the canals run, the fire in the Zoroastrian temple is lit. The scholar is asleep over his books. The astronomer watches the stars. The music has stopped, but the night it was played into still holds the shape of it. This moment exists. Right now, on this night in 700 CE, Chang'an is alive. You are here. In a few hours, the drum will sound again. 600 beats and the ward gates will open. The city will wake, the markets will begin, the caravans will move, the students will open their books, the palace will hear petitions, the canals will carry boats. But that is later. For now, Chang'an is in its deepest hour of quiet. Let the city hold you for a little while longer. The willow branches trail in the dark water. The stars turn slowly overhead. The horses shift in their stalls and are still. Somewhere the faint sound of chanting continues. The monks do not sleep. Not all of them, not all the way through, low and rhythmic and ancient. Let that be the last sound you hear. The city breathing, the monks chanting, the great dark river of history moving slow and quiet beneath everything. You are safe. You are here. You can rest now. Good night from Chang'an. Good night. Thank you for spending this night in Chang'an. If you enjoyed this journey, History ZZZ has many more waiting for you. Ancient Rome, Babylon, the court of Kublai Khan, the great library of Alexandria. Wherever you would like to rest tonight, we have a world for you. Sleep well wherever you are. History ZZZ.